when we decided to become an interdisciplinary school, an interdisciplinary project-based school, there was nowhere to go to figure out how to do this work. And so we were at a crossroads. Either we say, oh, well, there's nowhere to go, nobody's doing this well, let's let it go, or we figure out how to do it.
If you're going to do a project-based learning, it needs to be full commitment. You can't just assign a project to students and then pay lip service to it here and there and expect to have anything meaningful come out.
It was the first time that all of the content areas had an investment in this project. Before, when history wasn't part of it or math wasn't part of it, they'd come to the team meetings and basically just sit on the outside of the circle. And I felt like this time everyone had input because it was going to affect their class.
I think some of the students really understand that in the real world, this is the kind of thing they'll have to do, and they appreciate that they're getting practice at it before anybody else.
They were really excited about the prospect of seeing the way that our content areas could connect together. And I think that's where some of the challenges lie as well, is seeing how carefully you need to plan this out.
You need to know DNA to do these,
Okay.
but you don't need these to do the project.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Our Summer Institute is really it's an opportunity to get core subject teachers and career technical education teachers together in the same room with large amounts of uninterrupted time to develop interdisciplinary units.
Okay, when they're leaving algebra, what is the stuff that I know, no matter who taught them algebra 1, this is the stuff they're supposed to be doing?
So they look at the current data of the students coming in, and once they've identified the benchmark standards, they're going to write assessments in their content areas first, so that they know what it is that they're teaching to mastery.
We essentially begin with the end in mind, and we think about, okay, if the purpose of this project is to get students to demonstrate mastery with certain concepts, what do each of us need to do in order to get them to that point?
And then we sit back and we all talk through our standards and we explain them to each other, because I don't really understand the history standards, the math standards. So those content area experts explain them to me. And we start talking about natural ways that those standards can overlap. So this will take care of the creative part of the website, them actually creating the crime story. We'll be talking about flashbacks and foreshadowing and all the things that offer. For English, it's extremely easy. There's so many different standards, and they revolve around response to lit and persuasive and expository and poetry. I mean, you just have a plethora of things that are so easily integrated. You've got listening and speaking standards and reading and writing standards. There's just so many to choose from, and they're not linear, and so you can move with the project, which is why we always put English in last, because English can do whatever they want, which is why we always start with science and math.
I think we have to start with Luke's stuff because his is the most sequential out of everyone's.
Okay.
At about week 7 in intermediate, I'm hitting the stuff they need. So about close to halfway through the semester. So this is my 3rd year being a full-time teacher in the classroom, and up until now, I've worked collaboratively with other teachers on various things, but we've never really done this level of team planning across the curriculum, across the content areas.
How much of what remains there is what we see in the project?
Directly in the project?
Like I was asking you earlier.
To make the connection?
Making the connection, but also they're going to need it in order for the project to be successful. I think that this allows me an opportunity to gain some perspective and gain some sort of exposure to what my colleagues are doing, what's working for them, and it helps me improve my own practice because I'm not in isolation.
For myself and Jenna, it being our first year of teaching, learning how to teach for the first time or plan for the first time, I'm learning about forensics, and I'm learning about math, and I'm learning about all of these things, and it's exciting.
The Crime Time project is basically a forensics project. and basically they have to solve who may have committed the crime using the content areas that the 10th grade is in to make these determinations.
Is this something that we're as a team agreed upon, that we are expecting big picture wise out of media, that they are designing their own website?
If we are super organized, like we're trying to be, it will go fairly smoothly, but because it's a new medium, last year they did a similar project, but they did it with video only. This year we're creating this whole interactive website.
They get to go through the process of solving a crime by using the DNA, the science, the math included behind it. The English and the media portions essentially tell the story. And then the user gets to basically take on the role of detective as they go through each stage of this website.
What we had discussed initially is getting all the content, all of it, taught by before winter break. You know, and finally, you know, this end product starts to take shape and we start moving backwards. Okay, well, what do I need to do in my content area class in order to make sure that the students are meeting my standards and learning what they need to know in order to create this product?
We have several questions about how forensic science actually works in the field. You know, your role as a detective, I understand.
Kind of stuff.
Okay.
Fibers.
Fibers
like
and
hair.
Okay. These here are kind of what you're talking about almost, but these are this is for DNA, and what they are is little squares with an adhesive. So maybe my name is Troy Holliday. I'm a detective with the San Diego Unified School District Police Department. There's a lot of little things that the kids need to establish in the early stages of this classes. So it'll be a challenge, but it's going to be a good class and a good learning environment for these kids and a good experience. It'd be nice to see more classes like this in the future.
Asking kids to do real world things naturally requires them to go beyond what they know. You have to believe that engaging children in the content and making the content real and relevant is positive to learning.
We think we're designing this incredibly captivating and engaging project, but we want to know whether or not students are going to agree. I also want to know if what we're expecting of the students is reasonable. Actually, asking a student is probably a better way to get a feel for that than about any other way.
There are kids that are going to come in, high school kids, and we're going to run our projects by them. So explain to them what we're planning on doing, what the kids would be doing, what audience they would have, and all of that. And then they give us feedback on, you know, that's a stupid idea or that's the best thing I've ever heard of.
Okay, so last but not least, we're going to have the 10th grade team from DMD, which is at Kearney High School. They're going to present, and you're on the clock for 5 minutes presentation.
So what we want our students to do is to design a website that can be used in the 7th grade or classroom that teachers can use to help engage their students in content that they might not otherwise be interested in.
So we'll have an assembly with our 10th grade students where the kids are trying to, you know, figure out the evidence and consider who might have done it.
We are anticipating bringing in industry members, coroner's office, to forensic scientists, to actually taking our students into the field as well. At the end of the day, we're not designing this because we want to look for ways to convince ourselves that our subject matter is related. We're designing this because we're looking for ways to get students to buy into this and for students to get the most they can out of this.
You've taken an actual real life subject as crime investigator, and you mix it in with different subjects, and it makes you want to learn learn different things, and it makes it more interesting.
I think that shows how motivated they are to make us motivated, and I think that's good because most teachers just want to get through the day, just give them the work that they have to give the students, but this shows that teachers are really wanting us to learn and want to learn.
So today we had all of our 10th graders move to the auditorium for their 3rd period where we launched our big crime time project, our interdisciplinary project for the semester.
Welcome to DMD's 10th grade project launch. For those of you who are new to our family, this will be your first look into how project-based learning, otherwise known as interdisciplinary projects, work here at our school.
This is day 3. We have now been in school for 3 days, and we have now kicked off our major project for the semester, largely because we are going to need the entire semester to get all the components done. And I think hitting them this early in the year with what they're going to be doing was really kind of an eye-opener to them, kind of really sunk in how important this is and how big, what the scope of this project is.
Behind me is a mock crime scene, much like those seen on TV. But instead of actors playing the part of detective, policeman, and medical examiner, here with us today are members of the San Diego community whose everyday jobs are to interact with crime scenes.
Probably the 2 points that we stressed the most over the summer coming into this project, understanding that authenticity and that realism to the projects was what was missing in the past.
My job entitled as a patrol guy would have been the first one on scene to see what was going on, all your W's, the who, what, where, why, and how stuff.
I know for me, I didn't really realize exactly what a detective does at the crime scene and how a medical examiner determines time of death and stuff like that. So it'll help inform my instruction.
I'm going to examine the body for post-mortem changes. I'm going to look for things like rigor mortis and lividity that maybe you'll talk about in your biology class. I'm going to look for changes of decomposition and any insect activity, and try and summarize all of those things to give an estimation as to the time of death, how long this person has actually been dead.
Time Warner Cable, Grossmont Community College, in addition to your teachers, will be part of the input, the feedback, and the final evaluation of your project this year.
But what we are going to do is throughout this process, we're going to be the client you're building this project towards. And what we plan to do is to be able to use the end result out in the community with schools all across our footprint.
I just want to make sure everyone understands, the idea of a client is different and distinct from the idea of an audience. You're producing this project for Time Warner Cable as well to use as that resource for your audience and, more importantly, their audience, equally important. So the stakes are higher than they've ever been for you to rise to the challenge of doing well on this project.
So the idea with the Connect a Million Minds initiative is that Time Warner Cable will connect middle school students to high quality after school programs in science, technology, engineering, and math. So the plan is for us to be able to bring this to those middle school students that we're trying to serve, which are those after school programs, and enhance what they're doing in their after school classroom.
The project is called Crime Time, and we have to create a website for 7th graders based on stories that we wrote in our English class about a crime. It's like a game, so the 7th graders have to figure out what they're doing and have to figure out, like they're the detective.
And this was the first time we have an actual client, like someone that they're working for outside of the school. And so just for me personally, that was really exciting. I loved that Time Warner was here.
I think that more than anything what this launch did is it helped set a context for the sort of professional caliber we're expecting out of the quality of their work.
I was like, that sounds really fun and really awesome, and I really just want to do it. And they were explaining how it's going to be a game and how we had to teach these 7th graders how to like convict a murderer, whatever murderer we decided to make. And so it was kind of like thinking, okay, so I get to make a bunch of things up, and then I get to make them learn about them.
I think the important things that they did get were that we do have important clients, we do have experts that are pretty interesting, and it's going to be a big project. I think they got those 3 things.
Kids are demanding back to us why. Why do I need math? Why do I need science? And I think the project makes the learning real. It engages the kids, and then they go into the content asking questions.
And so how will your user, like the 7th grader, make use of what you just described, the math?
So there would be a sort of like frame of reference for what sort of suspected people we're looking for.
Number 7, an explanation of how gels help to solve crimes. So after we've taken the DNA out, we need to amplify it.
Okay, so just like last time, you're going to go view the comments, look in this class period, the comments that are directed towards your group.
But as a teacher, it's unbelievably rewarding to be able to talk to your students about how the English is relating to the math and how they're going to use their English skills to communicate what they're learning about math to an audience, or to be able to connect You know, their Algebra 2 skills, the things that they're talking about in biology. Yeah, you got the slope of the line, you got the y-intercept. So what's the equation?
Y equals 0.95x plus 145.
Yeah, that's the equation you could use. So if I told you somebody's footprint was like 30 centimeters long, what would you do to figure out how tall they are?
Plug it into the equation.
Into x or y.
X.
Yeah, and it spits out how tall they are, right? In centimeters, okay?
A website you're making about crime time, you expect it to be just in your media class, but then you go to math and you learn about like how you can figure out somebody's height by just knowing their footprint size. It's like, really you can do that, and like how it's all incorporated into one thing, and how you can like connect so many different subjects and like tie it all together.
Like they'll bring their stories in here and ask me to read them. I'm not the English teacher, but they want to share what's going on in all their classes because they understand that it's connected between all of us. It's not just going on in one class and I don't know what's going on. It's going on everywhere and we talk about it all the time.
So for the project we chose, math and science were really at the core. And we intentionally picked a crime scene investigation project because we were going to be able to incorporate the math and science more easily. So we now have the line on there. Now we just need to figure out how to get the equation of that line. Go ahead and select the cell right underneath the slope box. I'm going to show you guys how to get the slope and the y-intercept of your line here.
For mathematics, it is very difficult because it is so linear. So you need to know concept A to move to concept B. And if you don't master concept A, you have to spend all this time re-teaching concept A to move along this linear path.
So you make the same decisions I would make in a normal math classroom. I decide which standards are the most important for lifelong understanding, to have that really deep, meaningful knowledge of, and I embed those ones into the project.
We need to have the timing down in the way that we sequence and pace this project. Each of our classes need to be able to hold to the timeline that we drew up over the summer.
It always cuts at GGCC. It cuts right between them. Always. You can tell me what's going to be paired with this C, but G.
It's a learning process for me as well, not just for the students. So as I go along and as I progress and become a more skilled teacher, I think I will be able to make more of those natural connections with the standards and have less of a trade-off with the number of standards I've taught versus how deep I can teach them.
In terms of just the standardized testing, you know, the big tests we're measured against and the students need to pass, it is a trade-off. I definitely believe that there will be other approaches that could probably more effectively prepare students to take those tests. But at the end of the day, education is about much more than being able to have your students produce the numbers you want to make your school look good. If I can give students a meaningful understanding of the things they're supposed to know, and in the process, make sure that they have the base skills they need to pass those tests, I feel my job has been much more effective. I believe in terms of lifelong learning, it's going to motivate students to be interested to pursue these things in the future. Whereas if we just learn test-taking techniques and isolated skills, there's really no motivation for students to care about the field in the future.
We've been a small school for 6 years, and we've had test scores go up, for the past 5. Of course, our test scores haven't come out this year yet, but I mean, that's not a coincidence. I mean, I don't know, I can't tell you exactly why. Is it the fact that we're a small school? Is it the fact that we're a small school and a PBL school? Is it, but I mean, you can't really dispute that.
Today we had an assembly with some of our advisory classes teaching us how detectives search for footprints and fingerprints in a crime scene.
How many of you guys have seen shows where they spray something, some little magic spray, and then the blood will fluoresce?
I actually am a scientist. Like, I was a scientist before I became a teacher, and they do not see me as a scientist. Like, regardless of your background, when you're a teacher, you are a teacher. That's who you are to the kids. And it's nice when you have an outsider come in from the community and be able to really spark this thought from the kids and really get their critical thinking going.
Well, they're pointing to a 4 right there, an island, a bridge ending right over here. And so this is what helps identify whether or not a fingerprint matches or not. No fingerprints are the same for every person. Even in identical twins, they will have different fingerprints. They will, however, share the same DNA, which is interesting.
This school makes me look at a lot of things. Like, I see commercials the same way and thinking, oh, how long did that take? So I see like a show like CSI, and I think, well, in reality, they probably wouldn't do it that quickly, or you know, oh, it wouldn't be that easy to just find a footprint on the floor.
Wand and you can go ahead and let the dust or the powder touch your card, but don't let your wand touch it because it'll ruin your print.
That was cool.
There you go.
Yay.
Someday in the future, you know, you might interest you again and say, oh, I remember doing this in like 10th grade and it was really fun. Maybe I should like look into it now that I'm in college or something like that.
They see what's out there, they see the directions, and what we're doing with them can help prepare them for those directions. So I definitely think that is one of the critical portions of project-based learning, and without that, I don't know how meaningful or how much buy-in we really would get from the students.
Well, this is the first time at the 10th grade level I have seen them value industry in a way that it was fully integrated. In the level of participation that Time Warner, Grossmont College, all the industry partners at this level, the level they've been involved, we've never had at the 10th grade level before.
When we have that team meeting, we're going to go through this. You need to make sure that your weekly goal is something that you can fulfill by the end of class Thursday so that you can get your group points. Did you meet what you said you would be able to do?
We are currently at the halfway point in many aspects, not only on the calendar year as far as the semester is concerned, but we're right about the midpoint of the project itself. So we started by drafting and creating a crime story in here. In addition to that synopsis, we also asked you to create suspects. Why did we have you create the suspect statements?
Because our readers don't know like the whole story, they're solving it, so the suspect statements give them like more information along with the synopsis to solve it.
What we are expecting from you in this project for the final piece of the English portion of your Crime Time project is to produce a website user manual.
Project launch was great. The energy was up. We had students talking about crime time quite a bit, talking about law enforcement and being detectives, you know, talking about CSI every now and then and having a good amount of fun with it. And then we got about a third of the way through the semester and I was getting really nervous. So can you...
We really don't have like anything right now.
No. What about collecting images? What about... Are you going image heavy or animation?
Animation.
So perhaps Liz can start some animations. Because all the classes contribute to this, there are so many steps. And if they didn't have that first step done, what are they doing in my class? If they didn't have a proficient story, how are they going to make a website around a story that's not proficient?
I feel like sometimes, you know, we end up rushing things because we need to get to the content so that we can put it in the project. It used to be, we need to rush because the CSTs are coming. And now it's, we need to rush because the project's coming. So that's changed.
We had this, you know, great plan, you know, and there's the old adage, right? The best laid plans oft go awry. So we had this plan where everything was staggered. The English would happen, then the bio and the math would happen almost simultaneously, but they would be separated a week or two apart as far as how they infused their way into the media component. And in the end, it seemed like things ended up log jamming.
Coming into a new school and working with new students, not really understanding where their skill level was going to be, I found that I had to do, at least for the math content, far more remediation than I originally planned, which then pushed our schedule back for when the deliverables for the math pieces of the website were going to be due, which then, you know, clumped up a bunch of deadlines for other content areas and, you know, put the students in a much more difficult situation than we originally planned. I'm hoping that the geometry students will be able to get one component finished or, you know, ready to go to website-based by the end of next week. Originally, the plan was
they meet once a week, at least, for 90 minutes to talk about the projects, to meet with kids, to talk about where they're going, where they're headed, what's next.
This is what we did last year. Basic 3-column rubric, okay?
Matt and I would just bring everything in that we've ever worked on and worked with for this, and we would say, here guys, this is how it's worked in the past. What do you think?
It was great because we had Matt and Eden who have been doing this for so long that they really know the ins and outs. They know where to anticipate problems and how to counter them before they blow up. And they really, and just as a new teacher too, they were very supportive.
I gotta be honest, it was a little shocking at first to consider that Eden and I, with 8 years of experience, were considered the senior most members on the team. But again, that kind of youthful energy really came across strongly in this particular project.
I think that it also allowed for us to have a shared momentum. I think something that Matt talked about a lot was that throughout the project for the kids, there wasn't really any slump for them, that we really maintained a good amount of energy and engagement throughout the process, and I think that was true. Another parallel for the teaching team because of those check-ins, because there was always a next step for us to get to.
If I think it would be a good idea for us to start talking about what needs to be in our section of the binder. Like, I've started a list in my room of just a big yellow sheet of like, okay, this, if you, in your English section of the binder, this, and this needs to be in there. It's your responsibility. The chart's always here. Every time we do something else crime time related, I add something to the list. But their binders are looking awful.
Well, we're coming down the home stretch, and I will be honest, we're not quite where we want to be with the quality and completeness, for that matter. You got to have it complete before you can, get into the quality issues. But we held up our rough draft rubric. Out of 100 points, the highest score was a 63. Average scores were in the teens and 20s. So we said, we've got to come up with some sort of solution to provide an opportunity for more time for the students to work within the school day. And so that's what tomorrow's attempt will be.
We were sitting in a team meeting and someone was saying the students need more time, they need more communication, the deadline's coming up, and I said, well, why don't we do a day without walls? And that had never even been brought to the table before. And so it was just, and someone said, what's that? And so I explained it to them. And so we said, okay, well, let's make this happen this Friday.
Come on in, sit with your group. So, this is your home base, okay? So you will be with me first period, second period, third period until you finish.
We went through every group and we assessed who needed the most help in math, who needed the most help in English, who needed the most help in science, and assigned the groups accordingly. And then they spent the whole period there until they were approved to put their content on the website.
And until that happens, until that signature goes on the page, the students do not have an opportunity to fill in that content on the website.
Okay? So go back and really work on this restriction digest portion and have Javier help you, okay? Make him read it and see if it makes sense, okay?
I'm gonna help you.
You're gonna help her, okay? All right, next on my list is
teachers had to give up their curriculum day. I mean, you've got these teachers who are saying, I've got to meet my standards, I've got to get my content, CSTs are coming up.
If you get your stuff approved by that teacher, you can tell that teacher, they'll have a sign in, sign out sheet. You can sign out of that room and be escorted. You will be escorted by somebody to the next room.
The first time they did Classroom Without Walls, which I believe was last year, it was an extremely tough sell for me because I was like, well, how are we taking attendance? And how are we going to make sure that kids don't go to the bathroom or they don't take off or they don't go across the street? And how are we going to watch them? But I think that attitude is exactly counter to where we're headed.
What's your group's focus right now?
Practice our presentation.
For what?
Practice our presentation.
When it really comes down to it and the students have to put their nose to the grindstone, they get the job done. And anyone out there that's been a procrastinator along the way understands that sometimes you thrive best under that pressure. And I feel like that's where we're headed, is into that zone where, you can see just the countdown clock ticking.
Okay, he's fixing this one, and you want me to? Okay, I'm gonna read Christian's while I'm waiting.
2 of you guys could be doing that, is grabbing a laptop and start working on typing up the part that needs to be typed up, the explanation.
26.04. This page is gonna go on our website, and I'm just making corrections so it can be perfect. Because if it's not perfect, it's not allowed to be on our website.
You don't have it? We have to do it.
It builds your, I guess, a little bit of your self-esteem because you know they're not just gonna instantly like shoot you down and be like, oh, this is wrong, but they're gonna look over it with you and say, okay, you could change this to be a little better. And it builds this sort of your own potential to fix your own problems. So after a while, you know, oh, this is too long. Okay, I know how to change it because you've revised things so many times.
I'm editing the video. He's uploading like all the stuff for the website. She's getting the stuff approved, like the math, biology part. And he's working on the music.
And hopefully that's a learning experience for them, that they see one person can't do it on their own. It's not built for one person to do it by themselves.
For me, group work is a lot better because you get other people's insights and it's not just your one-track way of thinking. Like, it broadens my mind and my point of view.
I like that though.
I like that, but like how that comes out,
I told her that
I don't
doesn't
see
go
how
with the
it's.
color.
I don't understand what you're saying. Like, you're saying we're gonna have the quote, but it's not gonna be where we had it.
No.
Like, that doesn't.
A lot of students said that they worked well when they were with friends. There was a couple groups that said, well, we didn't work at all because we were friends. But I believe for the majority of the ones that I saw, they said, hey, we were friends, so we felt more comfortable voicing our opinions, telling each other to get going, you know, working outside of school at each other's homes together.
I like working as a team better. I wouldn't want to work by myself, especially on a project like this. I would need 3 more months from now to still be working on it.
So if you guys didn't have this extra day to do this catch-up work,
I think we probably wouldn't have finished, to be honest.
We like the idea of this day, but we don't like the idea of it being a rescue situation. So I think for next semester's project and next year as well, we will plan a day or two for complete work with their teammates, but it won't be, we have to do this because you're not going to finish. It will be more of, we think this is a good way for you to get work done on time.
At this point, you have
After she leaves.
You have 1 minute just to kind of get yourselves ready, and you can enter when you're ready. Shaylease, if you're the last person to enter, make sure you pull the door shut behind you. Good luck. You're prepared for this. Do well. All right.
I'm ready.
Wait, Diane, are you ready, Diane?
If you cry,
I'm not crying. Why would I cry?
If you cry and I come out here,
breathe.
we need to fight.
Okay.
Liz,
Walk in.
You got this, Diane?
Well, I think in an authentic setting, number one, you're asked to do things that adults do. So for example, how do you interact with adults? How do you present? How do you show confidence? How do you have eye contact? All of that is very uncomfortable for kids. It takes them beyond where they're at.
Hi, my name is Avery Cavazos, and I was the project manager for our group.
So
The
hello,
Unforgettables.
I'm Jose Suarez, and I was the project manager for this group.
Now we're presenting our site to you.
In our
and
media
teacher and
class,
student
we incorporated
manuals.
all the content from other classes into our website.
The biology portion explaining how DNA works. Here is our evidence page.
Our website is categorized in sections shown at the bottom. Each section is based on a class or content.
We had to
completed
learn
in the
many
class.
things, like gel
How to
electrophoresis.
find someone's approximate height.
This is our teacher user manual
It's also,
guide.
if you flip the page up, it also is just a brief
And it
summary
just
of
talks
this
about how
welcome
modern
right here.
biotechnology helps
You
with
can see
justice
that
system.
suspect 2 matches the DNA from the crime
Although
scene.
we wanted something that was fun for 7th graders, we needed something that was professional enough to promote.
Thank you for watching our presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Just a few things I wanted to call out that
It was painfully obvious in this presentation that some of you understood the content of this website and what to do, and others of you did not.
We say thank you for your time this morning.
I was super nervous, but then I got so much better when I was answering the questions.
And we had a card to kind of help us memorize things, but we didn't use that at all, and I was really happy about that.
I was happy that, I thought it could go worse than that. I thought it went pretty good. Some of the comments are kind of harsh.
But it also gives you this impression of how it really is, and how you have to feel, you have to be prepared, you have to make sure you can't mess up at all.
You feel better about it in the end because if you just learn it the traditional way, then you don't really have anything to show for it when you're done. It's just you know it. But having made the website, I like to be able to show my mom hey, I made a website.
Seventh graders,
You have 2 or 3 sites that you are looking at for right now. You have a piece of paper in front of you with the group name and an area for notes. All right, project managers, there are 5 stations. You're not walking them through it or mousing them through it, you're just answering questions.
It was scary. Like I saw them and it was like they're smaller than us and they're like younger, but they can like decide our fate and all that, and it seemed like a lot of pressure on us to try to make our site look good.
It was definitely a fire under some of their feet. They didn't like the idea that if they produced sub-quality work, some 7th grader was going to write a nasty review of it. They were not eager to have that happen. I guess last year, before I was here, some of the 6th graders that they had produced work for last year were not so nice in their reviews, and I frequently heard students just commenting, I hope that kid doesn't come back. I hope I don't get a review like that again.
Like, are they gonna like it? I mean, we made it for them. Are they gonna like interact with it the way we want them to, like the way it was designed for them to? Or are they just gonna look at it and say, I don't wanna do that, like teach me something else?
Like right now in middle school, we're like learning about DNA and cell samples and how cells divide. Yeah, and this really compares to what we're doing.
I think that I could have emphasized balance of text image a little bit more. We talked about it a lot, but I don't think that will make sense unless they see somebody else interacting with the site besides me.
Because we had a skip button at the intro, they didn't even read what they were supposed to do. They just clicked skip, and then they were guessing. They didn't read the information at all, and it was kind of like, it frustrated me because we did all that work and put all that effort into it, and they're just next.
These are for you to evaluate the projects that you just looked at. Here you go. You're welcome.
I mean, in the past, it's always been the teachers sitting there looking at the websites, and we could try and pretend to be this, this client. But to actually have them there and to have them using the sites, I was just amazed. Yeah, I was really amazed. And they seemed very honest with their feedback, which I think is great because it's just different for a student, for our 10th graders to get feedback from their audience rather than a teacher. I feel like when we give them feedback, it's just not as authentic.
These two, and I'm trying to remember this one
That's
right
the
now.
one with the strong animation perspective, the first person.
Oh, yeah.
With the car.
Yeah, that one, definitely. Yeah, I would say those 3.
Yeah, we're on board with the kids.
So the kids are accurate here. This is good.
It is good.
It's
I was a
very
little
good.
nervous.
Where we could say, hey, if you're thinking about science, technology, or math, because of our STEM priorities, this is a great way to bring it all together, and we can shine a light on it and help just raise it up and really feature it across the country.
Okay, that sounds really good. I don't think that we could have expected them to have an authentic experience without Time Warner's involvement in the project.
I was able to actually look at the sites in detail with the teachers. The teachers have really involved us in the whole entire process, which I've appreciated. Being the client, they've actually made us really feel like we are the client, that they're actually here to serve us, which is helpful.
It took a while for a lot of them to understand what that really meant. I think some of them didn't quite get it until Time Warner was on the panel for the presentations, and they were like, oh, this is the end, and they're here, and wow, they're seeing our final project, or seeing the comments on the final grades. I don't think that it really connected for some of them until the end.
We do need to value the industry outcomes as much as we do the academic. And this is a real struggle because a lot of people see the value of the industry standards in terms of kids being engaged. But until the teachers and me, until we value the outcome of the media piece, the kids will never be able to meet our expectations.
It was kind of like having another set of teachers, except who, I guess, knew more of what they wanted, so it wasn't just, okay, you need to include the math standards here, you need to add more grammatical sense to the sentences. It was more like, okay, it would be more appealing if you did this, or it would make more sense with the whole website if you kind of added something here, made it seem like now it's something actually kind of professional instead of just something student made.
definitely exceeded my expectations, but there were only 13 out of 35 groups that met the expectations. And that part still kind of resonates with me, and that's the part that I feel like when you ask me what do we need to do for next year, we need to have a clear model and we need to have the pacing down, because if those two elements are in place, then I think those other 22 groups have a legitimate shot of actually getting at least to the proficiency line.
What was interesting in looking at the student products was they were so comfortable with some of the English and history concepts that were asked to be integrated into the project, but where if something was going to be missing, it always seemed to be in making those connections between the scientific and mathematical concepts. And I think that is a direct result of us not modeling for them the math and science concepts in a more clear and synthesized way. Because much of what you would see when you did see math and science in this project was the cutting and pasting of definitions.
I felt like we need to have expectations for a different outcome that has the students able to demonstrate their understanding of those concepts in a way that doesn't essentially amount to regurgitating what the teacher provided them.
What I will push much harder for this time is that the teachers complete an industry-level professional project themselves prior to them asking the kids to do it.
We as teachers had not run through the entire process this summer, that we came across bumps in the road that we weren't expecting. And so in years past, because we'd done the project multiple times, because we'd done the whole thing together from beginning to end, we were able to anticipate better where the students were going to have difficulties. And this time I feel like those came up more frequently and just without warning. And we were like, oh, we hadn't even thought of that.
You know, we have to go through this, just like when we write a 5-paragraph essay and ask kids to write one. We go through writing the prompt and the essay ourselves so that we can get it clean, and those bumps that we have become lessons.
We need to have a clear model that shows them, here's what's possible, but we don't want you to feel limited to what we're showing you. And that's always the challenge. I mean, I felt that as a challenge as an English teacher is, let me show you a good sample of writing, but I don't want you to just mimic that style. I don't want you to just copy what you see. I want you to take it, break it apart, figure out what makes it good, and then find your own way to reassemble those component parts into something new and something creative, something fresh that, you know, that your audience is going to enjoy.
Anybody who's in this field for the long haul enjoys that process, that the plan, teach, modify, reteach, modify, reteach, modify, reteach, until you're whittling splinters off at the end, and it's as close to it as you can get, but you still just love the process and you want to keep modifying, you want to keep improving, you want to keep changing.
I have a Word document of about 25 things that will be done differently next year, and that's just in my class. There's another document of project everybody, we should try to do these things next year. So there are so many things that I wish that I knew that I did not, that would have made my life and the students' lives easier.
We would all individually make lists of things that worked and didn't work, and what we need to keep and what we should leave out. And when we had the students do their reflections too, and we would bring those reflections, it would just be paper everywhere. And then we made these big old long lists of, because especially for the first project, the one that happens in the fall, you're going to spend another 4 or 5 months working on something else, and you won't get a chance to really tweak it until the summer. So you've got to have record, because you're not going to remember.
And some of the projects that we started our 6th year are so strong now because we've gone through the bumps, and now they look like, wow, what a well-planned project, but people don't realize that that project was 6 years in the making.
I definitely like the idea of maybe every summer planning one new project and modifying the previous year's project to use, so that every year we're doing one thing new, one thing old for each semester. I think it would be cool to have maybe a cycle of 6 to 8 projects that we're picking and choosing from various years.
I have struggled over the last 6 years because I need to be better about the congratulations piece. I guess I always feel like the congratulations piece needs to have a little tag on the bottom that says congratulations, but you know, what's next? Because I never want us to be okay. I never want it to be, okay, we've done everything we can. We don't need to redo these projects over the summer. We don't need to talk about kids. We're doing great. I mean, our school right now could probably just say, oh, well, heck, in our school district, we're doing great. We're a distinguished school. But how distinguished a school can we be when the 70% that did what they needed is great, but is it okay if we only educate 70% of our population? So I'm always sitting over here in the 30% going, how do I get the 30% to the 70%?
Failure won't be an option for them. And I think that's what a lot of the mentality is through the system that we have currently, the system that continues to allow failure and socially promote students into high school, whether they're meeting middle school standards or not. They're allowed to arrive at our doorstep far below proficiency because that's been permitted. And so I think if we can show them that the buck stops here and that they're not allowed to just fail at the end of the semester, but we expect them to revise and show them that we are willing to be flexible with our own plans, then we can get them there.
I mean, it's great to be a distinguished school. We're moving in the right direction. But as my staff say all the time, we are a good school right now, but how do we become a great school? How do we become a great school? And being a great school means that nobody's falling through the cracks.